trenches. I had to beat the odds.
Welcome to High Style Sundays. Y'all know what's going on. We're here in the Dream Factory, the exclusive lounge and studios. Got LaBoca on deck. I got my man Anthony Devito in the building today. It's a special one. What's going on?
Nothing much, man. I'm very happy to be here, surrounded by so much electronic equipment.
I appreciate it.
Seems like a horrible mix.
You never know what can happen. Technology, tequila, 2 T's, right?
Yeah. Thousands of dollars of DJ equipment, and then just open tequila bottles. What could go wrong?
Man, for everybody that doesn't know what you're about and what you do, just give them a quick little about you.
Yeah, so I'm a New York City comedian. I've been doing it for about, I'd say like 13, 14 years, like something like that. And I'm just here in Baltimore doing shows at the Port Comedy Club all weekend. But yeah, that's about it. Grew up in North Jersey.
Yeah. Okay. And now, actually, talking about, I want to start actually with your childhood.
For sure.
So, first of all, as we know now, you're from Jersey, right?
Yes.
So, what was that like? I know you went through it was a single mother household,
yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what was that like? Also, like I know you explained, but losing your father at a young age.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
So, what was all that like for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, like it's kind of a thing when you're a kid. You don't know anything is different really until you're around other kids.
Okay.
So like I assumed, and not that not that it's abnormal. It's pretty typical like Italian household where it's like, in my house is like me, my grandmother, my great grandmother, my aunt, my mom, and then there's like this guy in the living room who everybody calls the tenant, who like in Italian households just keep secrets. Like you just you find out more and more as you go on through life. Like it's just so. He turned out to me, he was my grandfather. I didn't know that till I was like in first grade, I think, because my whole family just joked around because he just stayed in the living room. He had no door, he had no curtain, no privacy. They all called him the tenant. So when you're a kid, you just take everything that your family says at face value. So I was like, he's a tenant. And then my friend came over for the first time, and he was like, who is the man in the living room? And I was like, that is the tenant. And they were like, what's a tenant? And I was like, I don't know what that is. So then I asked my mom that night, and she was like, that is your grandfather. And so like he cheated on my grandmother 10 years before I was born. This is an Italian, woman, vendetta, like wouldn't forgive him, wouldn't let him sleep in the bedroom with her, banished him to the living room, and marked all the food in the fridge, not for John.
Oh, that's deep.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. So like stuff like that, where like I just assumed, that was like happening in everybody's house. And then we would go to school, and kids would be like, "No, like I have a mom and a dad and a brother." And I'd be like, "I have an only child and 6 women who are raising me." So you kind of learn, things are a little different than everybody else. But yeah, I grew up in like it's a super Italian area in North Jersey, like. Very like people watch obviously The Sopranos. Like the last scene of The Sopranos is shot in my hometown. My father died before I was born. He was involved in organized crime. This is also something I found out later in life. Every 10 years, I would just get like a big surprise from my family. But yeah, he was a made guy in a crime family. I found out that at 18. I was just playing basketball on the blacktop. And yeah, there was a guy there, looked a lot like me, never met him, never seen him before, said, your last name is DeVito, I'm your cousin from your father's side. Went home all excited. I mean, at that point, every person in my family is an older woman with a thyroid problem. So like, I'm like psyched to have another guy who's like around my age. I'm an only child, And that's when my mom sort of had to tell me, about my dad. Yeah.
And what was that like at 18, now knowing your real other part of your history?
Of course.
What was that like now you have kind of like an option?
Well, I think that ship had sailed. At that point, it probably passed. I was a sensitive weirdo. I don't think they need that there. Like, not every team needs a Rudy. I don't think there was like a worry there. It was more like I could see the hurt that it caused for my mom, just like, because there's a lot of trauma going through that to be the wife of someone like that.
Right.
There's a lot of just like, a lot of your nights are spent like not knowing if your husband's going to come home, and like regardless of what they do sort of career wise, this is a person you love, so like I think for her, he died in a pretty gruesome way, like, it was an assassination. So I think for her, it was a lot of pain. So, like, I think just registering that pain on her face was like, oh, I just know something really bad happened here, and you're my mom, and I don't want to, like, I didn't want to pry further just because I saw how much hurt it had caused her. So I was very, like, keen on staying away from, like, learning more, just because I assumed it was, whatever I was going to find out was going to be rough, and then eventually did find out like more details at 30, and then that's when I kind of like had these more like concrete feelings of like shame and confusing feelings about him, because like when you don't know your father, like you get to invent whoever he was. So like every kid, you create a hero, so then when you find out that it's not so much like that, that's when like sort of like I guess your belief in the world can change in that moment. You can become cynical, but I started doing a show about him. That's not what I'm doing here in Baltimore, but like that was very cathartic for me to kind of like investigate like my actual feelings like about the subject.
And how is it like? I feel like you want to make your mom proud and make her happy.
Yes.
So like, how's that going? And what do you try to do to make sure you keep that going on for her?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like with the show itself, it's she's very much a part of it.
Right.
So like, I mean, there's real stakes involved just because there's like danger involved. So like, she lived through it. I never did. So I don't want to talk at a turn in a way that could like put myself in any danger or put her in any danger. Like, it is my family, but at the same time, you are talking about things that like are operating outside of the law. So like, it's very much a show that like is very respectful to that world, with her input, because like she knows more than I do about like what not to say, what's okay, what's not okay. Because at the end of the day, I want to be alive. I literally just want to tell her story in a way that honors it in an honest way, but also in a way where like I'm not giving away the farm about like people that I am related to, because I don't like people are in whatever the situation that they're in, and if you can climb out from under it, unbelievable. And if you can't, like, that's your lot. And it's not to say like you should accept that lot if it is whatever, but like, there is ambivalence with it. There's not just, not so black and white as like these are bad people or these are good people. So like I really just wanted to tell her story. And then like in terms of like, yeah, she was this incredible mother who like lived through that, gave me this life, like kept me away from all that so I could just be a kid, and not sort of be bogged down by like the trauma of whatever that is. So she gave me so much, and on top of that, like she's an awesome mom. So like now, yeah, like I financially support her and help her out. And I'm grateful that I'm doing well enough where I'm able to do that. But I'm not doing that well. So there are days where I'm like, I would love to get a new couch, but she's got a Lisa Jetta. So, but yeah.
Okay. Now moving to the comedy. I know before comedy, if I'm not mistaken, you worked at Apple, right?
Yes, I worked at Apple and went to school for architecture before that. Yes.
Okay. So what was that moment like when you realized I should really be on stage or I should really be a comedian? What was that like?
I think I knew it pretty early on in my life. Like, because it's like anything where you love something. It hits different for you than it does for other people. So like that must mean something. So I remember being a kid and like obsessing over comedy or talking about it more than the people around me. It just struck a nerve in a way that it didn't seem to for other people. So I knew that has to mean something. So, but I also, there was no one around me who was like a struggling artist, or was in that world. Like, blue collar, North Jersey, it's like a lot of lunch pail, just like do your job, go home, eat dinner, do the repeat. So like I didn't really know the path forward with that. So I went to college in Florida for architecture, And then once I got out of college and worked in the office for a couple of years in an architecture office, that's when it kind of sets in of like, oh, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. So like once it's a career, you really come to terms. It's like a relationship where like if I'm marrying you, I need to know that I love you because this is forever. So like I think after like a year of being in an architect's office, I was like, this isn't how I want to spend my days. And I knew that comedy was something I'd always wanted to do, but I was never like the class clown. Like I was just kind of like a shy, weird, kid who kind of kept to themselves. I didn't realize like that is most of comedy. Like it's a lot of writing. It's a lot of writing and like figuring out how to articulate those experiences in a way to people that's palatable for them. So like it really is a bunch of just like shy weirdos from youth that are doing this. And once I realized that, I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Like these are my people kind of thing, Yeah. So then, yeah, from there, it just kind of like builds and builds and builds. And it's a lot of hard work. And it's a lot of hard work. It's like anything, it's like a little bit of luck. But if you show up every day and you do the work and you go on stage every night and you listen to your sets and you work on your sets, it's like, when you're in those moments where luck can happen, you give yourself a better chance of like being successful.
That's true. And how do you feel now? Now everybody wants to be a comedian.
For sure.
So, and now with social media, the presence of the really stage comedy isn't there in some of these comics.
Yes.
Throw some of them on stage, they
flop. Yes.
So, how do you feel about, or like, do you feel like that should be a necessary thing to call yourself a comedian? Like you should be on stage. Do you feel like that's a necessary part of it?
Yeah, I think to be a stand-up comedian, like the word comedian is pretty encompassing. You can be a comic actor, you can be an improviser, you can be a lot of things that makes up a comedian. But to be a stand-up comedian, at some point, you do have to get on stage and tell your jokes to people. And it's interesting because like I came up in the school of like, go to open mics every night, work on your jokes, get better, get on television, get a fan base. And now it's kind of flipped where you have people that are just like, oh, I can just put a clip up on social media. I'll get a fan base first. And then when I do stand up, that fan base is coming to see me. So like, I wonder how it's going to go because it's still pretty new. So we don't really know how everything's going to shake out. So I do wonder if like the people that do that are just satisfied in that arena or they're like, oh, I need to still get better because that becomes the difficulty. Because like when you're just performing for people that just show up and they're like, I heard comedy was going to be here tonight. You have to be funny enough to convince a person that doesn't know you that you're funny. It's a lot easier when they know you already to be funny. But with that, your jokes won't reach a level that they could because like it's a layup. So I don't know, like, time will tell on the people that like get famous from social media, do a show, their fans are already there for them if they continue to strive to get better, or they're just like, this is it. But like, I'm really not mad at anybody. I know how hard this is. I know sort of like you do it long enough, you kind of like make peace with what's involved, and you really at some point have to just look at yourself and go, like, why do I do this? Because I love this. So whatever happens on top of that is cool.
And before I get into the business side of it,
sure.
First of all, how do you deal with the hecklers?
It depends, man. You just like it's case to case. Like there was one last night where you just like you kind of make a judgment call. You don't always get it right, because sometimes you'll get a heckler who's just like aggressive. Right? That's difficult because guys are like. Men and women are both like bad in this regard. Anyone who's a heckler, they're whatever they're doing in that moment. But like women won't stop. Women won't stop. They're usually hammered and like, and that's just annoying. And then everybody in the crowd hates them. And like, but with men, it's like they want to fight. so then everybody in the crowd is like, oh, is something going down? Like. It's very uncomfortable. Right. So you just kind of feel it out. Like sometimes you can be like, okay, that person's just drunk. They're well-intentioned. They just don't know they can talk right now. I for the life of me, I never understood it. Because I love getting drunk. I've never once been like, I'd love to get drunk and just sit quietly in a room and listen to someone. Like I'm always like, no, I want to scream. So I don't ever understand the idea of like getting hammered and going to a show. Like you can't talk for an hour and you have to listen intently. It sounds like a nightmare. So I empathize with the situation. It's just like, yeah, just don't come here. But like it is case to case. Like you kind of just make a judgment call. If they're saying crazy things but they're harmless, you're like, all right, this maybe can be like, I don't want to condone it, but at the same time, like let me address it so that they feel like they're a part of the show because that's what they want, and then I can go back into jokes. Because really, what it's bad for is like the people that pay money to go see a show want to hear jokes. Because like, man, some of these people got sitters for the night. You know what I mean? It's like they don't want to hear this person just screaming at the person they paid to see. So they're furious. So you just kind of make a judgment call with like what you think the situation needs. And like I said, you don't always get it right, but the more you do it, you usually get it right more often than you get it wrong.
Okay. So I want to get into the business side.
Sure.
I know, like I've interviewed a few, young comedians, people such as like K-Rock, a big guy out here, or the youth out here.
Cool.
But if you can, sum it up a little bit about the business, like how do you really get that? Now you're booking gigs. Now you're really doing a tour.
Yes.
Handling all that, whether it's with a team or by yourself. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, I mean, like the comedy now is very much like you're your own business. Like it used to be very simple. 10 years ago, you basically you woke up, you wrote jokes, did an open mic, and everyone was precious about their material. No one would put up their material. Now it's like the minute you record something, you put it up. So you're very much like on your own. So I would say in terms of like it's a hodgepodge in terms of how you get booked. Like it used to be you just get an agent, you get a manager, they book everything for you. Now it's very much like you're on your own. So like honestly, it's like it sounds boring and dull, but it's like set up like a real schedule for yourself in terms of like, okay, like I'm gonna post here, like just make a checklist. Like I'm gonna post on YouTube, I'm gonna post on Facebook, I'm gonna post on TikTok. I'm gonna send out messages to bar shows. I'm gonna send out an email to a club. I'm gonna send out an email to another comic asking to open. Like really make a schedule for yourself. And like it's a really fun job. It's awesome. It's crazy that I get to do this. But it's any job where there's shit parts of a job. I don't know if I can curse on here.
Yeah, you do.
Okay. Yeah, I took a tequila shot. What am I saying? But like, so it's like you just gotta remember that it's like every job has this, and this is that part of the job that you might not enjoy that much, but do it because it is essential to your job if you want to do this as a working comedian. Because like, and if you're famous, it's a whole different story. That's a whole, I can't even speak to that. Like I have friends who are, and that's a whole other thing because then you're paying a team of people to do those things for you. But if you're doing this at like sort of like a middle class working comic level, you do those things because that's how you sustain yourself as a job. Apart from the fun part, which is just like writing and telling jokes.
And where's that peace for, when you're trying to get away, you're trying to stay away from the stage, you're just trying to get your head right. What do you do to attain that peace, that mental peace?
I think it's, I meditate. It's very helpful for me. And I think like just remembering that like, especially as a comic, in your life, your jokes come from experience.
Right.
So you need to be present to have those experiences. So, you want to listen to a lot of comedy or write every day. It's really just a way of like starting the car. Like you might not get anything out of it, but your mind is in comedy mode. So then when you go out to the world and you're just kind of taking in everything, like subconsciously, those things get filtered through this lens of comedy. So like you don't even know you're writing when you are, but it's very important to be in the moment, just because like that's when you're going to get these ideas that all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that's like funny, I should write that down kind of thing. So like, sports, like honestly, anything that you can do that makes you be in the moment so you can't think about like, oh, I need to post on Twitter, I need to be doing this, I'm anxious about that, I'm worried about that. Like I play basketball just because it's like, I can't think about anything else on a basketball court, there's no other things can come into play. Like I just don't want to get dunked on. Yeah. So like anything that you can do that requires so much of your energy to be completely in the moment, do that because that'll take you out of your head.
Okay. And like, you're here now. You know, you're this far in your career. Are you happy with where you are? Just where you
Yes.
see yourself at?
Yes. I think like it's tough, especially with social media,
Right.
because like you have a constant influx of like everyone lying. Either everyone doing as good as they are doing or lying about as good as they're doing.
Exactly.
So you're like, you just feel inferior all the time. So it's very difficult. But I think at some point, for me, it was really this like understanding of like, no, I'm very lucky to be doing this. Not everybody gets to do this. Like, I get to do this on a level where I make a living. I'm able to help my mom with a lot of her wants. And I love doing this. So I really just like remember like why you're doing this, because you love it and you want to get better. And like until, unless, and you're not, it doesn't matter how good you think you are, there's always room for improvement. Until Roy Wood stops doing comedy, you can get better.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, I know you've given a lot of free game, a lot of business advice,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of just overall general, things people can take away from this. But what would be your ultimate advice to the young comics, trying to find their path, find their light? What would you tell them?
I enjoy it. Enjoy the beginning, because that's honestly the most fun part. Because as you do this, you sort of do it for a living. It becomes your job, and there's worries that come with a job. This is how you're making your living. So there's anxiety that comes with that, and you're alone a lot of the time. When you're on the road, you're being flown out, you're being put up, you're doing shows, but you're by yourself. Like right now, you're with all your friends, and you're going from open mic to open mic, and you're obsessing about jokes, and all you're doing is talking comedy, and like it feels so nerve-wracking and horrible right now, but honest to God, this is the best part. Right now is the best. You're surrounded by your peers. You're like, anything is possible at this moment. And I really embrace that, no matter how scary it is or how many roommates you got.
Okay. Now, do you have any upcoming events? I know you have the 2 shows tonight.
Yes.
So do you have any upcoming events maybe coming back to Baltimore we should look forward to, or maybe where's your next stops?
I don't think I'm in Baltimore anytime soon. But I'm back in New York. I'm doing the show about my father called My Dad Isn't Danny DeVito at Littlefield Theater in Brooklyn, March 19th. So you can come out to that. And I got a special stand-up special on my YouTube channel called Brain Noise. So check that out. And then follow me on Instagram at comedian Anthony DeVito.
There you go. You got any last words, any shout-outs, anything you want to say?
Man, I don't know, man. Thanks to you, man. I just keep supporting High Style Sundays, drink Boca tequila, No, man, thanks for having me. This was great.
Of course, no, this is a great experience, great energy. I think gotta get you back here again.
For sure.
But no, my guy Anthony DeVito's here. We have La Boca tequila on deck. We're here in the Dream Factory, man. Once again, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come down here. I know you got a busy night, so I'll let you get some rest. Once again, appreciate it. Y'all keep watching this High Style.